This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. Build your fits of the day with Abercrombie's newest denim drop. Here's where to start. Abercrombie's 90s straight jean goes with any shirt from tees to sweater polos. Super versatile. Their loose and baggy jeans are more trend forward, so you can grab those and go out with your friends. Abercrombie's denim fits come in a range of washes. Build your looks around Abercrombie denim. Shop online or in-store.
Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply. USAA.
The characters are so lovable. You know, you really root for these characters, especially Doc, especially Marty, obviously. And just, I think I was at exactly the perfect age for this film when it came out, and the first one. And then being a little bit older and the second one came out, so you sort of had this knowing wink with the filmmakers that you were kind of fathering, you understood it, and you thought, I bet hardly anyone else in the cinema is getting this. As of course they were. But it's one of those ones that you really kind of invest yourself in because you know the characters.
Hello, welcome to Flixwatcher. Joining us in our studio today, we have David.
Hello.
Sam.
Hello.
And as always, Kobe.
Hello.
And we are here to review Back to the Future, Part 2. Thank you, as always, to the mighty people for the mighty, mighty tunes. And thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills.
Please do remember to write a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts, anywhere you can do where you listen to the podcast, because it really does help us.
And you can join in the conversation with us on Twitter
at FlixWatcherPod and on Instagram
at Flixwatcher. Hello and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher Podcast. In our studio today we have David and Sam. If you would like to introduce yourselves to our listeners and tell them about the work you do, please.
Hello, my name's David Litchfield and I'm an illustrator. I work mainly in children's books, making picture books, as well as making or drawing book covers for other authors, etc.
So you actually author your own books as well?
I do. I've written, so my fourth author illustrator book actually came out today. It came out so it's in the shops today. It's called Lights on Cotton Rock.
So as we record this, if you're hearing this, you can buy it now. Basically,
you absolutely can buy it now. Yeah. So I've got 4 books out in the shop that I've written myself, but I've also illustrated for a number of different authors. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's one of the best jobs in the world. I absolutely love it. I love making books for children. How do people get into kids' books? I think that's a question that you must have asked lots of times. So, I mean, you know, drawing is something that I've always loved doing ever since I was, as young as I can remember. And I don't know really. There's so many routes into it. I used to just sort of draw pictures and then post them online, and they got a lot of interest. So I got some work with the Beano comic. Nice. So that was one of my first professional. That must have been really cool. Were you fan of the Beano? Amazing. Yeah. Oh, I loved the Beano when I was little. So yeah. Which characters did you draw? I drew Dennis the Menace on it wasn't any strips. I didn't make any. It was a one-off. Or every once in a while I'd draw sort of one-off pages. But yeah, no, I drew all of them. And in the Beano offices on Fleet Street, I actually got to draw all the characters. So in their offices, there's a big painting that I did in the kind of Lowry style. Yeah. Fast Street Kids. Yeah, they're all in it. So Beryl the Peril. Yeah. All these great characters. What was the fast one called? The fast one. There's a fast one in the... Was it an ostrich? Yeah, with Billy Whiz. Billy Whiz. Yeah. I don't know if that was the Beano. Was it Dandy? Oh no, of course it was. That was the Beano. Yeah, the guy with the absolutely before my time. Was it? Okay, sorry, it shows my age. So yeah, it's just about kind of working hard. Just putting all your effort into it. I'd spend hours and hours, days and days trying to make my portfolio look as good as possible, but also just love what you do, and making your own art. And then I used to put it up on Twitter, and that's kind of how I got noticed. So, who are you, good sir?
Hi, I'm Sam Gilby. I'm also an illustrator, although most of my stuff is more on the pop culture side. So I really love to make movie posters.
You say that almost apologetically.
Yeah.
Do I?
Yeah.
Sorry, I do posters for Marvel
films,
and do commissions and get involved in
like Back to the Future,
reimagining posters.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
Well, it's always...
Fuck my life.
Such a loser.
It's totally always been my dream. So I guess part of it is like, maybe I can't believe I'm saying it out loud, actually.
Sure.
Because you feel like a bit like, oh, it's actually kind of happening. No, but I've always, I've been drawing my whole life as well. And always just, it was like the excitement that I felt going to the cinema or reading a comic. I always wanted to kind of channel that into my artwork. And really, I've just kind of kept doing that and kept it going. So it's... I'm very fortunate to these days. I've done some licensed posters for some of my favourite movies like Back to the Future, Alien, Die Hard, and some other classics. And hopefully I'll get to make some more and kind of keep it going. But
excellent.
Yeah.
With you both being illustrators, how do you sort of deal with people borrowing things that you've done, or do you ever find your images end up places where you haven't been credited for, or things like that? Or are you?
Yeah, that's a good... certainly with things like Instagram, you'll occasionally... You might follow a hashtag or something that someone's ended up sharing your work and then you kind of see it. But I feel like I used to worry about that, like think about, I should watermark everything. And I kind of go for phases between I put a signature or watermark on stuff, but then it just gets out there anyway. And I got in another way, conversely, it's like anything you've ever done is out there forever. Yeah. So things that you're less proud of, say. That from
No, I've had like work appear on T-shirts and things without my say-so, and it's one of those things that unfortunately does come with the modern age. We need to promote ourselves, we need to get ourselves out there, but there's a massive risk that doing that you will get.
In fact, I've got a good one. I was at Manchester Comic Con a few weeks ago. A guy came up to my table wearing some unofficial, wearing my own artwork on his T-shirt, and I was like, I never got that made into a T-shirt.
Amazing.
And I actually had a nice chat with him, and initially he was a bit like, "Oh, I'm really sorry." He'd actually just made it himself.
Oh, okay.
So there was no mass. No,
mine was taken and put on a really reputable website that sells clothes.
Was it Nike?
I don't think I should say, but it's one that lots of people would have heard of.
Sure.
They were very naughty.
And with the movie poster stuff, basically, there's all these companies who literally take the JPEG, they'd run a Facebook ad where the page is up for a few days. They say, get this limited edition poster. And it's just like they've just stretched the JPEG up to poster size, never credit the artist. And like what happens is you get tagged in the advertisement because of your interests are overlapping with what they're marketing to. So then it's like, oh, great, thanks. And what can you do? You could either hire a lawyer, but you could literally spend all day doing
trying
that
to
stuff.
fight those fires.
Yeah.
So we're here today talking about Back to the Future 2, which is your choice, David.
Yes.
So can you tell us why you chose it and give us a 2-minute synopsis?
I chose it because I just love it. I think it's a great film. I think it's a great trilogy of films. And I just thought it was an interesting one to talk about, really. So quick synopsis. So it picks up immediately after Back to the Future 1, where Doc and Marty McFly have to go to the future.
And Jennifer.
Jennifer, absolutely. How can I forget Jennifer? They have to travel to the future because Doc has informed Marty that there's a problem with his kids. And they need to go and sort the kids out.
Christopher Lloyd's come in the episode.
Yeah, thanks, Christopher. That's good, man. Go home. We didn't invite you.
Stealing my thunder, Christopher Lloyd. So they go to the future. They quite quickly sort out the problem with his kids. But in the course of doing this, Marty is very naughty and he buys a sports almanac magazine, which has all the sporting results from the last 50 years. So he thinks, I'm going to make some money out of this. So he takes that back to 1985. The future they go to is 2015. And then they go back to 1985 only to realise that 1985 is all messed up. And Biff, the bully from the first film, has kind of made... He's now a multi-billionaire and has taken over Hill Valley. and turn it into like this gambling kind of mecca, and it's crime is a huge problem, and there's criminals running around everywhere. Anyway, so they then have to go back to 1950 because sorry, I missed the bit out. So,
we don't need to go that deep into it. We'll be talking about the film. Don't worry about it. Helen, what are your thoughts on Back to the Future 2? We've already talked about Back to the Future 1 in the previous episode.
Quite recently.
Yeah.
So I have not previously seen Back to the Future 2.
Whoa. What?
Whoa.
So this is the first time.
What?
Had you previously seen number 1?
Yeah, but I hadn't seen it as much as a child. I have mainly seen that through Secret Cinema. I had quite a few issues with Back to the Future 2. So I found this quite confusing film. They go to the future and then they go back to where they come from, and then they go back to the future in the original film. Yeah. So I didn't enjoy that as much, and I thought it was a bit overcomplicated. And if I'd have been a kid watching this, then I probably would have been like, I don't really understand it. Also, Jennifer is not Jennifer. Jennifer is a different Jennifer.
Elizabeth Shue.
Yeah, Elizabeth Shue, and then she's kind of in it for a bit, and then she gets knocked out, and then she's kind of not in it. So it's a bit like, well, why was she there to be knocked out? And she's not the character she was the first actress. So that was confusing. There's no George McFly in this one because Crispin Glover wanted too much money, so he didn't come back in that, which is a real shame because one of the things I really liked about Back to the Future 1 was George, and Biff in this is really, 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 really horrible. I mean, he's horrible
Griff,
anyway. Griff.
Yeah.
Biff?
So Griff's the younger one?
Yeah.
Or do you mean Biff as the Trumpian character?
Yeah, the Trumpian character.
Sure.
Is really, really horrible.
Yeah.
And it didn't really sit that well this time round. And things like the fake boobs, which obviously are meant for a laugh, were just a bit uncomfortable. And Doc's catchphrases, I think, were overused in this one. Elijah Wood's in it.
Yeah.
A very early role.
Yeah.
And there's also a really, really creepy Michael Jackson thing in the future, which I found even creepier this time around. So I find it mostly confusing and a bit odd. And I was like, oh. So
What's going on with it?
yeah. So maybe I'm looking into it a little too much than you should do for a sequel.
Well, I mean, I think this is the benefit and disbenefit of maybe having seen it with older eyes, not seen it as a kid when it came out. But it's still, I think there are some things that are more problematic with this one than there are with the first one. Yeah. Certainly. David, Sam, what were your thoughts on it?
Well, it's a film I've definitely seen a fair few times, although not as many as the original. And so it's the one in my mind, because a few years ago it was obviously actually 2015, and we had the whole, all the anniversary of that, and now we're at the future's the past and all that stuff. And the place I was working, I have fond memories of that time because they brought a DeLorean to work. Yeah, wow. And I got to sit in one, so that was very exciting. But anyway, back to the real Marty McFly. It was just I definitely feel that it's not aged as well as the original.
That's the first one, you mean, not the original Back to...
Well, yeah, the part one.
Yeah.
And there's some problematic scenes, as you say, like, and it feels like it's kind of hampered by the fact that Crispin Glover and
Elizabeth Shue,
Jennifer couldn't come back. Apparently, her mother was ill at the time. I can't remember the actress's name at the moment. But yeah, so it's just hampered by all these, like, then there's like creative decisions that I feel like they've done because of that, and they're trying to maintain a continuity, and there's just so many moments in it. Like, so actually, I think the 1955 stuff, when they finally go back to like the scenes of the first film, that's actually best. The final act is good, and whilst the hoverboard stuff is cool. Like, it's kind of strange that they go to the 80s cafe, which is meant to be, presumably that's the place that all the people who can't deal with the present go back to this nostalgic cafe. But that's actually where you still have, like, there's no human server. And there's like this weird Ronald Reagan thing and
Michael Jackson
and stuff.
Ayatollah Khomeini as well, I think, is one of the...
Yeah, they start fighting.
So that's not all that nostalgic in a way, like, because that would freak anyone out who wanted to get back to what the 80s were like. But yeah, and obviously there's some really cool production design, but also it feels like they really went for like a positive look at it, but then it's also now feels it's quite goofy as well. It's positive bordering on like the gang costumes and stuff. They're so over the top, right? And it's fun, but it's also the first film feels, despite all the time travel themes, it feels very grounded, and this just feels much more of a silly. And I think part of that comes from like, so you have Crispin Glover playing Marty's dad, so it kind of doesn't make sense that Michael J. Fox plays his own son.
Yeah.
And for me, like, even though that's quite fun, the first moments you see himself like kind of acting more of a loser. It also, I feel like I'd rather see just another cool young kid who you could believe was his son.
But then that's part of the plot point, is that he looks exactly like him, and that's why they can do it. I'm sure they would have come up with a different way to save his son otherwise.
But he also plays his daughter as well, which is really, really, really
this
weird.
Part, I totally agree with all of you on, because that is freaky. Like, his son I can live with, because like you say, it's sort of, that's part of the plot where it's like you look exactly like your son, so you got to pretend to be your son. The daughter is just weird because he's also got a kind of stubble and stuff, and it's all a bit weird. It reminded me, this is probably way kind of a weird thing to remember, but do you remember the W.H. Smith's adverts with Nicholas Lyndhurst from Only Fools and Horses, where he played all the family?
Yes.
It reminds me of that, and that was weird. So, I'm with you on that. I feel that I need to defend the film as well, though, because I don't know, really. I totally get how there are problems with it, and how it looks now is dodgy, and there's certain some of the issues it tries to raise in the corrupt 1985 version. They don't stand up with our scrutiny of today. But I guess there is something about watching it when you're young. I watched it, when it came out, so I was 10, 9 or so.
Did you see it in the cinema?
Yeah, I saw it. Again, I can really remember where I saw this one. I saw this in Butlins.
Nice.
In Skegness.
I've been to Skegness, Butlins.
The cinema was awesome there.
No, I didn't get to go to I just thought it was the worst. I hated that. I hated those holidays when I went to
Well, obviously,
Butlins.
they're not great holidays. But
Butlins and Bognor Regis, that was great.
But the great thing about that holiday was the cinema was free. It was like part of your ticket, I guess. So we went to the cinema every single night for that holiday. So I saw some great films of that era. And Back to the Future 2 was absolutely one of them, and I absolutely loved it. I'd seen, I was a big fan of the first film, had it on video and everything, rewatched it over and over again, and just absolutely loved pretty much all the things that you didn't like about it. I absolutely love the fact that it was kind of revisiting the first film, that they got to meet their older selves, and all those kind of stuff that I can totally get would be confusing, and probably was confusing. I loved it. I loved the fact that you had to really kind of concentrate on this film, and I felt so clever as a 10-year-old or 9-year-old that I was actually getting it, and I was like following it. But and to be honest, it was quite a brave kind of move for a blockbuster film to have such a kind of unusual, twisting, kind of mind-bending plot. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of verging on, it's almost like an art house kind of plot in a way. It's like Ligeti or something. It's like they're revisiting their past to kind of confront their future. And it's like, wow, if I really wanted to read into this, I could get some, dark themes into this. But yeah, I loved every minute of it, and I still do. And I actually watched it, the whole trilogy, with my 6-year-old son. And he loved all of it. And I remember watching the second one thinking, he's not going to follow this. He's not going to get this. And, part of it I had to explain. I had to I actually had to draw him a diagram about, how it all kind of meets up. But he kind of got there. But again, it's kind of the same with me watching it when I was 9. I guess you just, as long as you're kind of getting the general gist of it, you can go for it. You can enjoy it, I think.
I think this is almost like a cartoon type film, isn't it? Yeah. As a kid, I was just like hoverboards. Yes. Wow, future. Wow. Yeah. Griff's got this like hoverboard with air jets, and they have to go to a different future where like Strickland's got a gun and like everything's gone mental. Wow. Okay. So his mum's not his mum, and his dad's okay. Wow.
Yeah.
But you don't. And I'm sure I was able to follow the storyline. But when I was a kid, I was just like, cool thing, other things going on.
Absolutely.
But it's only on rewatch. I think this is the first time I've seen it since it's been 2015. That, and maybe the first time I've seen it as a more of an adult. That's the only time those kind of thoughts come into my mind. Apart from the fact that I don't think the special effects work as well as the first one do.
No.
Don't hold up as well as the first one. I still really do enjoy it. I think the things like with Crispin Glover, the main thing about that for me, which is a problem, is that it would have been cool to see him properly, and I would have liked to see the storyline with them two playing off. So that was a cool part of the first one, which we didn't see. Yeah. But the dark part about that is that they just got a lookalike to play him in those kind of scenes, and then Crispin Glover like sued them for likeness, which is something they've done in the past with other films. Yeah. They just kind of brought someone else who kind of looks like the character. Like,
but that's just.
I think it changed the law,
Superman
right? Didn't
3
it?
or something like that. Superman 2 or 3, I think.
Right.
Who played Lex Luthor?
Dad. Oh no, it wasn't Superman's dad, was it? It was
Lex
Marlon
Luthor?
Brando.
Oh, Marlon Brando.
So it was who? Oh God, goodness.
Lex
Superman.
What's Lex Luthor?
Oh, Gene Hackman.
Gene Hackman. I think Gene Hackman pulled out Superman.
Yeah.
And then they replaced.
But he's not playing the same. He's not playing Lex Luthor, is he? The guy who's in number 3.
No,
he's playing a similar kind of
sort of a.
No, but I think he pulled out part way through Superman 2, and they just replaced him with a lookalike.
But that's
kind of scenes.
Kind of just filmmaking.
It is,
though, right?
That's the only thing I can take against that. With Elizabeth Shue, like you say, the original Jennifer, which we should know, which is quite bad. Her mum was ill, so she just literally couldn't do it. And the fact that the other film finished with them flying off in the car together, that meant they had to carry on with that thing. But I think they could have put her into the story a bit more.
A little bit, yeah.
It's a bit like they sort of had that ending, and they had to bring her along because they've already filmed that ending 5 years ago or 4 years ago, whatever. Yeah. And then they would suddenly realise, oh, actually, we don't have much to do with this character.
We'll put her in the alley.
Yeah, we'll knock her out.
I mean, that's just weird. And then the police find her, and then
and then
we'll just take her home.
Then she spends the rest of the film on her porch, which is a bit odd as well.
Yeah, because that bit with her going home was quite cool. But I think if
there could have been more of a story with that.
Yeah.
I think that also the main disappointment I think for me is that I just didn't find this as much fun, and the bits that were kind of like the fun bits they'd kind of already done in the first one, so it was them repeating the good bits, which I just thought was a little bit disappointing.
You said you found the Biff character troubling. But I think I forget how dark it is. That
I think he becomes more troubling
in this
now
one.
that the age we're in. Now we're in the Trump era,
and that kind of thing is apparent.
It's like they've predicted that. It's the rise of Trump is the rise of Biff. I mean, I'm guessing they did base it on Donald Trump, right? Because in the 80s and 90s, he was this big.
I'm not sure, but
figure.
I remember when I did watch it as a kid, I never really used to like that section because it just felt a bit too
he's evil,
intense. And also, he's visiting his graveyard and
he kills his dad. Man, he's an evil guy. Really.
And when they go to the 80s, he is like, "Oh, you're going to be my wife," and he's really like handsy. And horrible. Then.
And he's got mistresses as well alongside that.
The 2 girls in the bath and stuff.
Yeah, that's it. And then you're going back, and then he's got his way, and it's hard to watch it now.
It's really hard because of Trump, and But for me, that film it's not better than the first one, but it's the one that I think I've watched it more than the first one,
right?
Because of. I really responded to the physical kind of action scenes a lot more. There seems to be more like action in the second one, like the hoverboard piece for me is far superior than the 50s skateboards scene.
There's a bit in a tunnel. With
the bit at the end with the car, that's really dramatic where he's like punching him and he's kind of trying to kill him in the tunnel. But I do remember actually watching it in Butlins, and the scene that I really remember is the bit where Marty McFly from the 50s goes through the door and whacks the other Marty McFly there. I howled with laughter in the cinema.
Oh, really?
I found that just because the physical kind of the pratfall element, I absolutely loved that. And I remember telling people, oh my God, there's this really funny bit where he gets knocked out by himself, and everyone's like, that wasn't that funny. But I really remember that. And then I watched it with my son, And the same thing happened. He like burst out laughing when that bit happened. He just found that so funny, and I thought, oh, maybe that's just a literal.
I mean, Michael J. Fox is a great comedic physical actor, isn't he?
Physical, absolutely.
But I think that kind of bit was a bit most tedious for me because it kept on being like bits where it could end and go to the next bit, next kind of section of the story. But then it's like, oh no, it's the ooh la la, it's the porno magazine inside of there. Oh no, he gets knocked out.
It's frustrating to watch because you're like, oh, just get it. For goodness sake, just get it.
You know, we're going to get it, so let's just go on with that. And this is shorter than the first film, but it did actually feel a bit longer for me.
There's distinct sections, isn't there?
It's nice I like the fact that it goes back, but maybe it's not as fully explored, the idea of going through this sequence in a slightly different way. It's quite exciting to see it from another angle, literally. Yeah. But it's that thing with time travel. In this version, it's almost like multiplicity, or so every time you go back, there's a new version of yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like you could always say, well, why not? Okay, that's gone wrong. Just go back a minute before with a third
iteration.
Or you go like. Or you could do it where there's only ever one version of yourself. So I quite like the idea of it being like imagine if it was more like Groundhog Day. So it was more like if you go back again, you've got to fix all the problems you did the first time and the new things that have now happened. Yeah. That could be quite fun. So
I mean, it's interesting watching it after the recent Avengers film as well, where they
use time travel.
Careful with the spoilers.
Oh yeah,
just as
the bit where Ant-Man says "Back to the Future" is bullshit. That's because they, you can see the.
Was it Ant-Man? Wasn't it the Hulk?
I think it was Ant-Man.
Because Ant-Man's trying to reference Back to the Future.
Yeah, the Hulk was like talking about, so no, that's why that's wrong. He's like, I can't believe the future is bullshit. But
so that perhaps leads into a question. There's a couple of questions related to this film. Time traveling film, guys. Which for you is kind of the divining rod for?
Actually, when I watched Avengers, and I mean, this might be a spoiler actually, but where they sort of say, "Oh yeah, we're just going to go back in time." When I thought, I was like, "Oh, they can't just do that. Surely." It's like we've reached that point now. Where it's like time travel is like the easy option, but admittedly, Avengers did it awesomely. So we forgive them. But I don't know.
I'm just going to interject. I love time travel films, and I really love Source Code.
Right.
Sure.
Is that a time travel film, or is it like a
It's kind of time travel.
Time travel,
in that sense, and The Edge of Tomorrow as well.
Yeah, because I don't know. Have it as a time. I wouldn't class it as a time travel because it's a loop based, isn't it? Would Groundhog Day be a time travel film as well for you then?
It kind of is.
I guess so.
I think so. Yeah. Even though it's like he literally can't travel through time.
Yeah.
But he's travelling back every.
Yeah, sure. I guess another loop.
Yeah.
But that's probably my favourite.
Not Time Cop.
I've never seen that. I'm surprised I haven't seen that. Jean-Claude Van Damme,
it's
Time,
awesome.
I love that film. I loved it back then, I'm sure. Yeah.
This for me is the defining. The Back to the Future trilogy. I mean, again, it's probably growing up watching the films. Like the Time Machine, the classic 1950s film, I hadn't seen since I was a lot older.
Yeah.
This was my introduction to time travel, I guess.
Sam?
I love this film, but I think it's the whole thing. For me, it's the problem is having Michael J. Fox play all these different characters. Sorry to come back to it, but because what's great about the first film is when he goes back and sees his dad as a young man, and then the power this could have had going into the future to see a son that he didn't know he was going to have, and suddenly see his own son as a teenager. That would have been powerful if it was another actor. But because the sort of the humour then comes from it's just Michael J. Fox playing a dork.
Do you think because it seems like the cliffhanger that we leave in the first one is wrapped up really quickly. It's almost like they sort of thought,
the peril of their children doesn't really
it's like maybe they had another idea in mind when they finished that film of what the second story would be, and it would be involving Jennifer Moore, and it would be something.
Well, I think as far as I understood it, that was kind of just going to be like the ultimate cliffhanger.
Yeah,
and the
they
studio
didn't really
kind of
know
went,
if they were doing the second.
We're going to make another film.
Oh, really?
Robert, do you want to be a part of it? And he's like, I guess I'm going to have to be to make sure it's.
I didn't know
in
that.
any way, shape, or form good.
I just always assumed it would be made.
Which is really interesting because at the end of the second one is the trailer for the third one built in. So they'd already.
I knew it was going to be 2 and 3 for that one.
Filmed that presumably to promote
They were
at the
filmed
same
at the same time, right?
Yeah.
I, to be honest, when I saw it in the cinema, I lost my shit.
Yes,
I was like,
me too.
I knew there's
Yes.
another one coming soon,
Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
there's the date
And
right
I've got a
there.
glimpse. Yeah.
Magnificent.
Yeah.
And
But
I like the way they still do it, even in the DVD and video.
Yeah.
They still have that at the end.
even when it's on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a trailer.
I have to say that the ending before that trailer for me is, I think it's the perfect ending to a film.
Or with the guy in the rain.
Well, yeah, where it's like they revisit the first film, and then you think, okay, I know this scene, and it's shot exactly the same, and then you just have Marty running up. And,
Oh, right.
Yeah, and it's like, we gotta go back. And he's, I just sent you back. My Doc Brown is quite good.
It's just sing your own praises.
But I think that's a perfect ending. That makes me so happy, the ending. And then, to see the trailer afterwards, absolutely. I'm like you, when I saw that in the cinema, I was like, yes.
Right, guys, let's head to the scores.
Hello, I'm Sam Pay.
And I'm Martin Zoltz-Orstwick.
And we are the two hosts of a podcast called Song by Song, where we listen every week to a track by the musical artist Tom Waits. You might know him for his gravelly voice, very nice, his appearance in films, but also his multi-decade spanning career involving blues, jazz, and all sorts of other kinds of experimental music.
So we're basically like a book club for Tom Waits. And if that sounds like your cup of tea, you can find us at songbysongpodcast.com or wherever you get podcasts.
Girl, you have got to try this Laneige lip mask. Trust me, my lips needed that love. Love these vanilla vibes from Kayali. That top note is just so smooth. Smooth and stunning. That's what you get with this K18 hair mask.
Those brands everybody's talking about, they're at Sephora. Discover the hype with the hottest names in beauty, including Laneige, KLE, K18, and Rare Beauty. Only at Sephora.
Welcome to the patented, we haven't patented them yet, Flixwatcher scores. All of the scores are out of 5. You may have decimal places, and we will start with you, David, with your recommendability, please.
It's a tricky one, because I think this only makes sense if you've seen the first one. In fact, I couldn't even imagine watching it as a standalone film. It would be so confusing. So if you've seen the first one, I would absolutely recommend it. I'd give it give it a 5 because I just love it so much, but I totally understand the issues that people may have with it.
Sam.
Tricky one. When I watch all films like this that in theory are kind of kids films, now having kids, I'm watching these films again thinking, oh, is this the right time to show my kids? Like my boy's 6. And watching this, I kind of had that in mind, oh, well, he's going to love the hoverboard. But then some of the stuff that comes later is like, no way. It's like, and in the ways that it's problematic. So it would depend. I mean, if you've seen the original, you've got to see parts 2 and 3, but now it's almost as a curio of like, I just don't think they're anywhere as good. I'm going to go for a 3.5.
Helen.
I'm going to go for a 3, just because compared to Back to the Future, this is rubbish. It really doesn't. It just doesn't have like the relationship between Marty and Doc with the first one. The whole thing, obviously, Doc gets shot at the start. There's no kind of element of that, and their relationship doesn't really grow, and it doesn't have that kind of like really nice warm feeling that you get from the first one. I just don't think this has anywhere near as much heart, even from like all the product placement at the start. It just feels that it was something that was done for the sake of it, to kind of make money because it had been such a big hit and sequels were the thing of the 80s, and it just doesn't really have all of the things that I think makes Back to the Future what it is.
So you're going for a 3?
Yes.
I'm going to go for a 4.8 because if you've seen the first one, you're going to have to see the second one. I think, and also it'd be interesting to hear what people say. I'm super surprised that you've seen the first one. Did you see the first one as a kid?
Not 100% sure when I first saw it.
But yeah, for me, it's like a defining film of my childhood. And when we're talking to yourself, Sam, when you say yourself about your kid is 6 years old, there's so many films I should never have seen at that kind of age.
Totally. Yeah.
And wouldn't want to say you've been overcautious, but I mean, certainly I watched like RoboCop at 7.
Yeah.
Should that happen? So it would be interesting to see whether you decide that it's kind of right.
Well, I think like the first one, I feel like that would basically work. You know, it's just there's some scenes in the second one, where, especially where Biff's gone super dark, and it just seems so kind of over the top. But you can as an adult or a teenager, you understand it as being a heightened kind of reality to enhance the idea that everything's gone wrong. But I don't know, as a 6-year-old. But I mean, I saw the original. I remember seeing it at a friend's birthday party at their house on VHS. I must have been about 8, and it's the first time I'd ever had KFC. So it's kind of like the seminal moment.
Wow. This nexus of everything.
Yeah, like American things are amazing. And I think what I do love about the second one, though, and the third, is maybe the script's not as good, but Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd, they still have good chemistry together. And I think that's what carries it through for me. I still want to see them, doing their fun stuff, playing off each other, yeah.
Yeah, so 4.8. I think it's not as good as the first one, but I think if you watch the first one, you have to... I'm super surprised you haven't watched the second one, just to even round it out. I'm a huge fan of this. I think it's still a great trilogy as a whole. And I think typically the second trilogy does go a bit darker.
It does follow the Star Wars thing, doesn't it? It's like the second one is dark, and then the third one's nowhere near as good as the first two.
Okay, repeat viewing score, David.
Absolutely, it has. I absolutely think this deserves a lot of repeat viewing. Again, it's one of those films that maybe the first time following it is quite tricky. So that in itself sort of owes itself to repeat viewing. I think it's more of a love for those characters than the actual story, or maybe even the quality of the film overall. It's like, that's why I loved it so much as a child, is because I absolutely love those characters. I loved being baffled by the storyline. So yeah, I will watch that film over and over again.
So as a score,
5.
5 again. Sam,
I'm gonna say, for me, this is another 3.5. Like, I'm definitely gonna watch it again. But now what I find is, like, it's almost, to me, it's like any movie, it's kind of amazing that it got made at all. So it's actually, even though, clearly I've just spent like 40 minutes slagging it off, but it's, it's not my favourite, but it's still amazing. Like, the choices they made are still really interesting. Like, why did they, design these costumes, have all these elements, get the characters to come back, and so it's still a lot of fun, but it's almost enjoyable, like a step removed.
Right.
I would say I'm not just fully immersed in it, but I can appreciate it from this is a really interesting series.
Helen?
I've always said Back to the Future was not one of my childhood films, whereas like E.T. definitely, Labyrinth definitely, even though that is obviously watched now is a very different film. This just, I've seen it now, and I don't feel the need to go back with that. So a 1, please.
A 1. I think. Yeah, I'll be watching this again. But I think I'll be quite happy to watch maybe the first one in isolation and then kind of leave it there for a bit. Whereas with something like the Terminator, for example, I'd be like, Terminator 1, yeah, let's put on Terminator 2. Alien, yeah, let's put Aliens 2 on. But what's Back to the Future 1? Maybe not. Maybe not today. But if I do it, I'll probably want to watch the whole trilogy as a oneer. Like, sit down with some KFC, and like do it as a oneer. But I don't think I wouldn't have that compulsion. I don't think necessarily to go straight into this afterwards. So that's going to be a 2.5, I think. There, small screen score. David.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good on the small. I mean, it's on a lot on the TV. It seems to work quite well. Like, the first time I watched it was in the cinema, but every time since then has been on TV. I think it's a good one to watch at home, because you can just rewind the bits that you maybe don't understand, and can rewatch the bits that you maybe struggled with on the first time. So I would give it a 4.
4.
Well, I've never seen it on the big screen. I would love to. I would be interested to know if like some of the compositing effects maybe wouldn't hold up so well on the big screen. But I would absolutely love to, like this again, like Marty and the Doc, like their kind of relationship carries you through. Also, the score is still amazing, like Alan Silvestri's themes, just those opening notes, that kind of the xylophone, whatever it is, that immediately gets you into that world again. So I'd love to hear that on a big screen. But a small screen, you can watch it over and over, and it's still fun. So I'm going to go for a 3, back in the middle.
Helen?
I'm going to go for a 4. As we've talked about in the episode we did where we reviewed Back to the Future, having seen Back to the Future at Secret Cinema, I think there was kind of muted talks about them potentially doing the second one. And I think for them to do that would be, an amazing experience. Quite how they'd managed to fit 3 different potential
eras
sets in would be quite challenging. But I think the kind of the big spectacle of watching something like the Back to the Future films does add to it.
I'm going to go for a 4. I did see it in the cinema, but I think it's diminishing returns now because the special effects I don't think it held up. The prosthetics don't hold up that well. Like older Jennifer in 2015 looks really bad, unfortunately. But I still love some bits. Even when I first saw the trailer, or it was on like Good Morning TV, we see Marty there in the square and the shark comes out. I was like, that looks rubbish, actually. That holographic shark looks rubbish.
Well,
it's supposed to, right?
But they make a joke of that, don't they?
Yeah,
the kids go, it still doesn't look...
It still looks fake.
Yeah.
But I have to say, Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
He's playing an older man.
Needles.
Yeah. Well, Flea now looks exactly like Needles. So that was pretty good.
Yeah. I'm continually annoyed about this chicken thing. About him being called a chicken and like, dude, just...
Because that wasn't in the first film.
Wind your neck in.
Yeah.
I think his...
that wasn't like a character thing in the first film. They didn't even mention that in the first film.
No.
So that was clearly something that they just sort of added on to have an extra element to it.
So I'm going to go for 4 with the rest of you guys. Engagement score. David.
Oh, well, for me, absolutely, I would say 4. Like I say, it's the characters are so lovable. You really root for these characters, especially Doc, especially Marty, obviously, and just I think I was at exactly the perfect age for this film when it came out, and the first one, and then being a little bit older and the second one came out, so you sort of had this knowing wink with the filmmakers that you were kind of following, you understood it, and you thought, I bet hardly anyone else in the cinema is getting this. As of course they were, but it's one of those ones that you really kind of invest yourself in because you know the characters. So yeah, I'd give it a 4.
Sam?
I'm going to go in with a 3 on this.
Lower engagement.
I found myself watching it again, even knowing I've had times in my life where I really loved it. I feel like I'm done with it in a way. Like it's the bits of special are still special. But I just feel like I could kind of close the book on it a bit now. Do
you think you still watch the first one time and time again?
I think I'll still watch the first one over and over.
Yeah.
And whereas this feels like this is if you like that, you might also like this type thing.
That's the ultimate Netflix recommendation.
Yeah. But engagement-wise, it's just... I found myself kind of getting taken out of it more. And like I say, it's partly like I feel like I'm watching it a step removed, thinking about, why did they do that? And I'm not aware of that when I watched the first one.
So the film's actually kicking you out rather than you being distracted by external forces.
Exactly.
Helen?
Oh yeah, I'm going to go with Sam on this one, a 3. I was just trying to find out why George McFly wasn't there. And
did you realise it wasn't him though? Or was that just based on reading it? Because I didn't know until
I think I did because it's really weird that he's upside down and it's like, why is he upside down in that thing? But
yeah.
Well, it just wasn't right. And then when he was like dead, and I was like, but surely he would be. And then when he wasn't in it, obviously in the 50s either, it all was just a bit like, what's
So
it just was all a bit like
it's quite weird that he is such an integral part to that second section, and then in the first bit it's just like, he's just some weirdo who's upside down, but
it feels too strange. Like, why not just say he's out at the moment? That would almost be better.
But
so apparently Crispin Glover didn't like the ending of the first film because it implied that if you have money, you'll have happiness.
Right.
Oh,
So
okay.
thinks it
It's
might be
interesting.
Yeah, it kinda
better off.
does.
So and also then, he was wanting to get more money to come back.
Yeah.
Which is, obviously that's ironic.
Paradox.
There's a paradox there. And then he sued for they used his likeness, and then since then you can no longer, because they're kind of pretending he's in it, right? It's like you're meant to just go, okay, well he's upside down, so I can't really see him, but his voice sounds similar, so just you go with it. But
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't even think it wasn't him in it, and it was only until someone pointed out that it wasn't the original. It was Elizabeth Shue that I'd realised, because typically I'd watch them far apart, so you just kind of remember those. There's a scene, "Hey Soldier," where we're going to, I don't know, some kind of weird double entendre about the truck, and then everything else plays out the same. So for me, it's just like, oh, that's the lady from the first film.
Because it's shot for shot, right?
Yeah.
They remade that bit shot for shot.
And you can actually see now where they've used the exact same bit, like where it crashed into garbage, that's the same bit, but then they reshot the bit, any bit where Jennifer's in.
Slightly more wrinkles in a second later.
But anyway, so I think if I put it on, I'm into it, and I was last time, so I'm going to go for a 4.5, and that gives an overall score of 3.612, which is quite a bit lower than the 4.41, which the first one got for us in the live show. Which, if you haven't heard, guys, we had a live show talking about Back to the Future 1. Go and revisit that to see what we thought about that.
I like that one.
So we reached out to Twitter.
As always, so if you follow us on Twitter, please do look out. We'll always put a little GIF. And for example, this one, we said we're reviewing Back to the Future 2 with DC_Litchfield and @Sam Gilby. Have you seen it? Tell us your thoughts for an on-air shout out on Flixwatcher. So if you would like to read the first one for us, David.
Okay, so the first comment is...
There is only one.
Only one, sorry.
Oh, wow, okay.
Scroll
Read
down.
the comment for us, David.
So the comment is from For Screen and Country, a BFI podcast. 4 stars. Better than the third. Not as good as the first. Which kind of summarises what we chatted about, really.
Pithy. Yeah. Well, guys, can you start off by telling everyone where we can find you online, and where we can buy your books, buy your posters, buy your badges, buy your everything that you do?
Sure. Well, the best place to find my work is probably on Instagram, where it's just Sam Gilby altogether. I'm the same handle on Twitter. Sam Gilby Illustrates on Facebook. And I have a store that's linked from there. Yeah, but that's the best place to see I share kind of work in progress and final artwork on my Instagram. So that's where you see the most stuff. My portfolio is samgilbyillustrates.com.
I'm also on Instagram as David_C_Litchfield. And on Twitter as DC_Litchfield. But I have a website which is www.davidlitchfieldillustration.com. You can buy my books in bookshops or online. And I use Instagram to post work in progress and all kinds of nonsense, really. So it's good fun.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes, and Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Ben, and that's Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.